Good morning. I'm Forsyth County District Attorney Jim O'Neill. I'm joined today by Forsyth County Sheriff Bobby Kimbrough. There's been a situation in Forsyth County that has garnered some attention, and we wanted to be sure that we inform the public as to what was going on. In Forsyth County, we have 5 individuals that are known as Forsyth Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisors. Each county in North Carolina has 5 of those supervisors. One of our supervisors that was recently elected in November of 2024 is Edward Jeffrey Jones. The purpose of a Forsyth Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor is to improve the natural resources in Forsyth County. It came to our attention that Mr. Jones may have violated certain North Carolina general statutes as it relates to election fraud crimes. I had a meeting with the sheriff after November of 2024, and I asked him to have some of his folks, his investigators, take a look at this situation to determine whether or not a deeper dive was required to see whether or not any crimes had been violated as it relates to election law. Hearing back from Sheriff Kimbrough, I then called the State Bureau of Investigation. The State Bureau of Investigation has original jurisdiction in all matters involving election law. That's a change in the general statute. The State Bureau of Investigation came into Forsyth County. They conducted an investigation as it relates to Mr. Jones and whether or not he had violated any of these election laws. Based upon their investigation, this matter was presented to a grand jury yesterday. The grand jury in Forsyth County returned true bills of indictment charging Mr. Jones with 3 counts of election fraud. The first count had a date of offense of July the 1st, 2024. It was alleged in the indictment that Mr. Jones had violated North Carolina General Statute 163-275, subsection 4, in that the allegation was that he resided in Davie County and filed for candidacy in Forsyth County. That was a true bill, count 1 on that indictment. The second count of election fraud also had a date of offense on or about July the 1st, 2024, same NCGS number, 163-275, subsection 4, in that Mr. Jones failed to disclose on his candidacy form that he was in fact a convicted felon. Mr. Jones had previously been convicted in Forsyth County of failure to register as a sex offender back on November the 21st, 2019. For that crime back then, he was sentenced to 2 years and 8 months, and he was released on December the 13th of 2021. Mr. Jones was also indicted on a 3rd count of election fraud, this having a date of offense of 10/17 of 24 in violation of North Carolina General Statute 163-275, subsection 7, in that Mr. Jones is alleged to have voted in Forsyth County when he was in fact a resident of Davie County. All 3 of these crimes I've just described are felonies. All 3 of these crimes have a classification that puts them in a Class I felony. While looking at these election fraud violations and keeping in mind the fact that we had previously prosecuted him here in this office back in 2019 for failure to register, the Sheriff's Department took over to determine whether or not any failures to register would have been relevant in this particular case, given the fact that he had been using multiple addresses and residencies. So at this point, I'm going to turn the press conference over to Sheriff Kimbrough. I'd like to first thank Sheriff Kimbrough for his willingness to get involved in this, to help see whether or not we had election law and election fraud crimes going on here in Forsyth County. So, Sheriff Kimbrough, thank you to you and your people for your willingness to step up.
I appreciate you. First of all, again, I want to thank you all. I'll let you know I really appreciate what you do in this community, but I couldn't go on without thanking the SBI. I want to thank the SBI, definitely the DA's office, and all of these men behind me that do what they do to bring it to where we are right now. So what I like to do is, because as always, there's a lot of intricacies going on, so I'd like to introduce you to Sergeant Faircloth. He was the investigator that conducted the investigation as it relates to that, as well as the SBI, to bring you up to where we are at this point in the investigation, as well as the incarceration. So again, I thank you all for what you do and for being here. So Sergeant Faircloth will give you all the intricacies as to how this investigation unfolds, as well as with the SBI and the charges as it relates to the sex offender registry. Thank you.
Good morning. Sergeant Faircloth with the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office Sex Offender Registration Unit. In December of 2024, the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office SORU, Sex Offender Registration Unit, recognized the name of Edward Jeffrey Jones, the recently elected Forsyth County Soil and Water Conservation District Manager, as a previously registered sex offender in Forsyth County. To ensure the SORU records were correct and up to date, investigators proactively confirmed information concerning Mr. Jones that was on file with the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. During their investigation, they noted that Mr. Jones had notified the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office that he had moved to 123 Deer Trail in Moxville, North Carolina. Since Mr. Jones had been sworn in for his newly elected position, the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office investigators believed that he may be living back in Forsyth County without properly notifying this unit of its return. If Mr. Jones was in fact living back in Forsyth County and did not notify the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, then this would have constituted a violation of North Carolina General Statute 14-208.11. While trying to determine if Mr. Jones was in fact living back in Forsyth County, the Sex Offender Registration Unit located evidence that showed Mr. Jones had resided at 1228 East 24th Street, Winston-Salem, from May of 2023 until November 13th of 2023. During this time, Mr. Jones had not reported this change of address to our office. As such, the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office Sex Offender Registration Unit has issued a warrant charging Edward Jeffrey Jones, a 55-year-old black male from Moxville, with one count of failure to notify the last registering sheriff of a change of address as required by North Carolina General Statute 14-208.11A2. Thank you all.
So a couple of quick matters. As I know, these are going to be some of the questions that are getting ready to come. When is the next court date? So Mr. Jones has a court date on the election fraud charges on March the 3rd. That will be in Superior Court, as he was indicted on those charges yesterday. On the failure to register as a sex offender, that next court date, as of now, is February 28th. Of course, that is subject to change. The election fraud court date will be firm. I would also add that I understand there's lots of questions, and we're limited in what we can explain to the public right now. The charges themselves, ironically, are pretty self-evident of what we believe the evidence would show. But nonetheless, I have to preserve and try to preserve Mr. Jones's right to a fair trial in all of these matters. I would tell you that the folks over at Soil and Water, if you are a district supervisor, as the position is that he ran for, that is not a unpaid job, so to speak. They don't, the folks over there, the 5 that we have in this community, they don't receive a salary. They get reimbursed for their time on the board when they have meetings and things of that nature, so it wasn't as if this was a $50,000 or $100,000 a year job, okay? But most of these people do it because they actually care about the water and the conservation issues here in Forsyth County. So I hope that this does not reflect poorly on what they do, because they do have important jobs, and as I said, most of them do it for nothing. They do it out of the goodness of their heart. Mr. Jones is currently in the Forsyth County Detention Center under a $100,000 bond. As far as soil and water conservation is concerned, we don't know how this case will proceed from here, but I can tell you that their policy is that if someone were to miss 3 meetings in a row, soil and water gets together and they make a decision about whether or not the person who is serving as a district supervisor should continue in that position. So any questions as far as what his future lies with the Conservation Board, that will be up to them. But I do know that what their policy is you miss 3 meetings and they make a decision about whether or not they're going to continue to have you serve on the board. So I think I've covered everything I needed to cover. I know that there's going to be certain questions, and again, forgive me if the sheriff and I are not able to answer all your questions, but we'll do the best we can here. Yes, ma'am.
Can you just clarify again the sexual offender situation, what the law or what the crime was, and all of that right there?
Yes, sure. So failure to register as a sex offender means that once you are convicted of a sex offender registration crime here in North Carolina or outside North Carolina, in this particular case, he was originally convicted out of New Jersey. And when he moved to Forsyth County, he did not properly register, then moved to Davie County and didn't register. And so by not maintaining a current address with the Sheriff's Department, that you are in violation of the statute. And that's what we prosecuted him on back in 2019, and that's what he has been charged with again late last night.
So he did file in New Jersey, but then when he came here, he just never did.
Correct.
Both Forsyth and Davie.
Correct.
How does it get this far? I mean, he was elected on a ballot for months on end. It was no question who it was. We ran a story about him. How does it get to a point where he's an elected official, and then we get to the point that we find all this information about it?
Yeah. So, you know, part of what bothers me about this is that as somebody who has to, every 4 years when I run, I have to disclose whether or not I've ever been convicted of a felony. And of course, he failed to do that. Now, the State Board of Elections, when somebody submits an answer saying that they are not a convicted felon, they do not then follow up to determine whether or not that's a truthful answer. But given the fact that so few people in our community, across our state, don't really understand what the job is of a soil and water district supervisor, people don't care about it, people don't research it, and had he disclosed that, at least the public, had they wanted to go and do a little research before they voted, would have seen this. But your question really is probably better taken up with the State Board of Elections as to why there isn't some mechanism in place to determine whether or not that candidate is telling the truth to the public.
And then what about the man that wanted the position in the first place? I mean, he ran against someone, and he's out there now sitting at home wishing he could be in that position. What would you say to that person?
Well, you know, I think that I can't speak for the Soil and Water Conservation Board, but they obviously had a candidate who was competent, credible, who did not win that election. There may be an opportunity for them to, if Mr. Jones is taken off the board, there may be an opportunity for them to fill that spot with him on a temporary basis until the next election. But this is not something that happens often, and so Soil and Water, in my conversations with them, they're trying to figure out their way a little bit on this as well. But the first step would be if he misses 3 meetings in a row, as I said, then he can be removed. But yeah, it's an excellent question, and the Board of Elections may need to relook at what they're doing in Raleigh when candidates form and run a quick record check on them to see if people are telling the truth.
And is that what you hope to happen?
Of course, yeah. I think, you know, it's hard enough that the public has a hard enough time understanding who, you know, most of the public knows the sheriff, most of the public knows myself. They have a hard time knowing the judges. They have a hard time knowing the county commissioners. They have a hard time knowing the soil and water people. So any extra information that we could provide to them that helps them make an informed decision at the ballot box would probably be helpful. Yes, sir.
And again, how
Yes,
was
ma'am.
this brought to your attention, and how long was this person in a position of power, per se, before you started investigating him?
Well, I had conversations with folks over at the police department about the time he was getting sworn in, and raised some red flags in our office. I know by the time I talked to the sheriff was aware of some situations too, and it was just a matter of having somebody like Agent Marsh come in and really, as I say, do a deep dive.
So it didn't have anything to do with any media investigations that brought it to your?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
At this point, are you aware of how many meetings have occurred and whether or not he's been present at them?
According to the Soil and Water Conservation Board, they've had 2 or 3 meetings, and he's been at all of those meetings.
Is this kind of a slap in the face? Like you said, every 4 years or every time you run, you have to disclose these things.
Yes.
And, you know, this person didn't. And there's already a trust thing between the public and sometimes officials. I mean,
Yeah.
is this a slap in the face to the people like you and other elected officials who do the things?
100%. And in my conversations with Sheriff Kimbrough, you know, I can tell you that we both agree that the public needed to have that information prior to November so that they can make a good decision. But it is a slap in the face for the rest of us that are doing what we're supposed to be doing when we fill out those candidacy forms and, you know, saying that what we're telling the public is the truth. And I don't really have much patience for people that don't want to tell the truth to the public.
And I think it's also important to mention his victim. His victim is potentially out there seeing this guy who was elected. Do you say anything to that?
Are you referencing on the failure to register?
Yes.
Yeah.
The victim is
Yeah, and you know, that is, the failure to register is a whole different apple here, and but I also find those to be troublesome because the public is able to get on Sheriff Kimbrough's website and find out where people are living, and, you know, you want to know that your kids are not going into area or down a block where perhaps a registered sex offender lives, and when people are not being honest on this regard too, that creates a big problem because we all have kids out here that we're worried about in our community that we just want to be sure that they're safe. And when people are not disclosing that, that's equally as bad, maybe worse. Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to touch on what he was convicted on in New Jersey at all, with making him a registered sex offender?
I don't have it right in front of me, but I believe there's still an active warrant out of New Jersey. Yes, sir.
Sir, you mentioned that it was a Class I felony.
Yes, sir.
Can you say what the penalties of this crime would be a bit more specific?
It is considered a low-level felony. You know, our felony classification started A for capital murder, and Class I are the lowest type felonies that we have. Failure to register as a sex offender is a Class F felony. It's about midway down. But, you know, again, I think it's important that the public needs to have faith in their election process, and, you know, these kind of allegations certainly undermine that.
So going forward with, you know, further election processes, is there anything that you can do on your end to maybe change that? I know you said this kind of goes back to the Board of Elections, but any more processes you can put in place?
Well, again, I'm not in charge of, you know, statewide or even local elections. We do have to rely on a separate agency for that, and that's the appropriate agency is the Board of Elections. Of course, again, I think it's a simple fix as far as that's concerned. When when a candidate files, let's get a quick record check done and be sure that what they put down on the candidate application is in fact accurate. And that's a simple little fix.
As much as we blame the Board of Education, I mean, people wrote his name down. It took people to research his name. What would you say to those people that might not research before election cycles and might not spend due diligence on who they're actually voting for? Because once again, it took thousands of people to vote for him. It didn't just take one person and say, that's it.
Yeah. Elections have consequences, and if you don't research and understand the people you're voting for before you show up in November, these things can happen. But again, I put the onus first and foremost on the candidate to be truthful to the public when they're filing for an elected office.
Is Sergeant Fairclough able to speak about the active warrant?
I'm gonna. Sergeant Fair.
It's up to you, Sheriff.
No, that's fine. Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
That active warrant, can you explain exactly what the warrant is for if he's already been convicted?
And what he was charged with.
Sure. So originally in New Jersey in 2001, Edward Jones was convicted of a sex offense against a 15-year-old juvenile female. Okay. So he moved here and registered with our office in 2021. He had previously been staying here, which pertained to the 2019 case there, didn't register it then, but he registered with our office in 2021. So once he's a registered sex offender here in Forsyth County, they go over what's called a duty to register, which provides them the laws, regulations, and the do's and do nots of somebody on the sex offender registry. This document's provided to them. They get a copy of it. It's read to them, signed by them, goes over all these statutes. So pertaining to the warrant yesterday, he is charged with failure to report an address to our office as required. Under 142811A2, they're given 3 business days to report an address to us if they change it within county, and 10 if they decide to move out of county. So that's what he's being charged with. It's not necessarily, they all fall under the statute failure to register. This is a subsection of that for failure to report an address as required.
So he was convicted in New Jersey in 2001. Did he live there until 2022?
I don't know exactly, I can't tell you exactly where he lived until he came to us in 2019, but I know that's when he moved here and registered here in 2021.
This may have already been said, but when was he arrested?
For this case? We did arrest him last night and take him to the Forsyth County Detention Center. Anybody else?
Have you guys been in contact with the Board of Elections, and what have they had to say about this?
I would refer that question to the SBI and the Board of Elections on that side of it. We handled just the registry violations here in Forsyth County.
I guess last question, anyone can answer it. What would you say, like, I'm watching a home right now, and I'm passionate about soil and water, and I want to get involved. How can I get involved, or what can I do to make my name known that I would like to fill that position?
Can I refer that one to the DA,
Yeah,
if that's okay?
anyone can.
That's okay. I don't work on the election side of it either, so.
I'm sorry, ask that question again?
So I'm watching a home right now, and I'm passionate about soil and water. I want to get involved. What can I do to get involved, or what kind of steps can I take to get my name into that system?
Well, you know, again, most of these folks are doing it practically volunteer-wise, and they're not getting paid anything for this. So they would love, I'm sure, I don't want to speak for them, but I'm sure they would love if people called over there to let them know they still support them during this time. And this is, you know, this for folks that are not in the news much, they're not in the media, and they're not used to getting roughed up and being dragged through the streets like it's happening to them right now. It's just not fair to them. It's not fair to their board. It's not fair to what they do. Probably a good time just let them know you support them and let the criminal justice system process play out.
Is there anything we didn't ask that you'd like to say now?
Sheriff, do you want to add anything?
No, everything's been said here. You asked some good questions. I think that the process, as you say, you know, we all share something in this as a system, as a society. Let's validate who we're putting in place. Let's do our due diligence, you know, even as voters, even as candidates. The candidate had some right to tell the truth, but as voters, we should try to see who we're putting in the office. And so I'm glad that the system caught up with the failure. I'm glad that the man is incarcerated. And from that, we have learned some things, and we'll move forward. Yes, ma'am.
$50,000 bond or $100,000?
100K, 100K. So, as I said, you know, I'm glad that the system caught up with itself. Of course, I'm glad of the coverage that you all gave it, you know. So I think that as a whole, we are better today as a result of what has happened here in Forsyth County, and we'll move forward. And I appreciate you all for the work that you do. Thank you.